no matter where you look, people will tell you the exact same message. Communicate clearly. The authors, the entrepreneurs, the people who are in relationships, they all have the same message. But the thing is, they're all wrong. And I know that this is a pretty strong claim, so let me explain it step by step. The first reason why they're wrong is that they assume that people are at least somewhat rational. And that perspective makes sense if you're an employer and have to give clear commands to your employees, and it is in your employees' best interest to follow them. That makes sense. The better my commands, the better the work they produce. This perspective absolutely makes sense, and I don't disagree with it. The problem is, when you leave these very narrow contexts, like employer giving commands to employees, this perspective, this idea that people are these at least somewhat rational beings, completely falls apart. If you don't believe me, try negotiating with a Latina and then tell me, is clear communication still real? Because I can tell you, not really. You see, these days there is a real worship of this clear communication thing, which is to say, when clear communication doesn't work, it's not clear communication which is to blame, it's just you to blame who obviously didn't communicate clearly enough. And so in this age, it's not really about did the communication work or not, it's if it didn't work, then obviously it's your fault and you didn't communicate clearly enough. But the reality is, just as no amount of motivation can stop a quitter from being a quitter, so too can no amount of clear communication make a crazy person stop being crazy. But if, of course, you worship this idea of clear communication, then you will not see it. You will instead start to believe, well, I should just communicate more clearly. But I'm telling you, that's not how it works. With some people, it's just a massive waste of time because they may not be irrational, but they simply have no interest in listening to what you have to say. They have no interest in understanding or following. They just don't care. Or maybe some of them are just genuinely crazy, but most of them who don't understand you, even if you communicate very clearly, just don't care. And so stop gaslighting yourself into believing, well, I just didn't communicate clearly enough. No, enough is enough. Just stop and move on. You don't have to worship clear communication. And now, the second reason why this whole clear communication thing doesn't really work is because this world is built on deception. And this is not actually necessarily a bad thing. Like, deception can prevent conflicts and deception can help with romantic relationships. Like, it can make the perceived risk go up, which is useful if you want to avoid a fight, because if both people believe that they are going to lose, no one is going to fight, because fighting is bad. If two people fight, both get weaker, and so a third may come along and defeat both. This is why increasing the perceived risk through deception is most of the time a good thing. Likewise, decreasing perceived risk is very helpful for romantic relationships. So deception is not necessarily a bad thing, but deception is built right into existence. Even your thoughts are often just deception. And so leaving that part out and just focusing on communicating clearly doesn't work. Communicating clearly is the easy part. Noticing when you are being deceived and also knowing how to deceive, that's the difficult part. You know, let me give you an example. If your girl tells you, don't worry about this photo from yesterday's party. That guy, we're just friends. Nothing happened between us. Don't worry about it. And you tell her because you communicate clearly, well, you know, I couldn't sleep all night because I was worried about it. And now that you've told me that you're just friends, that nothing happens between you, I can sleep much better. The thing is, when you speak that way, when you really express your thoughts and emotions, the only thing you will have demonstrated is that clearly you are an idiot and you don't have self-respect. So this is a prime example. You've shared your emotions, you communicated clearly, you opened up, but the result is a disaster simply because you didn't understand the motivations and the intentions and the subtle nuances behind relationships. And not just romantic relationships, but relationships in general. In the most general way that there is, the relationships between a hot blonde and you, the relationships between you and your friends, the relationship between you and your thoughts, everything, every relation can have deception built in it. And if you do not understand these things, then if you communicate clearly, you will actually go into the wrong direction most of the time. Because, look, unclear communication is like this. Clear communication is like this. If you are pointing in the wrong direction, then it doesn't matter whether you point like this or whether you point like this, because you're still moving in the wrong direction. You understand what I mean? And so, given that deception is so central to life, so central to existence itself, it is illogical to try to communicate clearly, because it is much more important to understand when to communicate clearly and what to communicate clearly than it is to understand just what to say. Because people are not computers. A computer communicates like this. This pixel, this color. This pixel, this color. This pixel, this color. This pixel, this color. But people are not like this. And this is why clear communication does not really work. It is much, much more important to understand these subtle nuances. And fundamentally, it is more difficult to make a video like this where you say, hey, it's much more important to look at the nuances, because it's not something that you can teach really. Like, you just have to get out there, you have to get experience, and then you will be able to know, hey, this is deception, hey, this is not deception. Whereas on clear communication, you can develop some techniques to be able to express yourself better. But the thing is, this is the easy part. The hard part is gaining all of this experience and then understanding when to say what. And perhaps the people who share this message of clear communication simply forgot that this is the case, or it just comes all naturally to them. And so the thing with clear communication is their only constraint. But I'm telling you, that's not the case. This is the much bigger picture. And then the last bit, the last like 5%, that's where you need the clear communication. And now someone smart may say, well, actually, you can both sharpen your words and your senses at the same time. There's no contradiction between those things. And the thing is, in theory, there is no contradiction between those things, but in practice, there is. Because when you are in a setting where you have to converse, you can either focus on what you are going to say and how you are going to express yourself as best as you can, or you can dedicate your attention to listening and to analyzing the people and the room around you and what their intentions, what their fears, and so on are. So although you can in theory do both, in practice you cannot. You have to pick one, simply because your attention is limited. If, of course, you are already a master at analyzing the people around you, then, of course, focus on clear communication, because that's then your constraint. But if you are not a master, you should focus much more on listening than simply waiting for your turn to speak and then being able to express yourself clearly. Because, once again, whether you communicate like this or like this, when you are communicating in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter whether you communicate very unclear, very blurry, very low resolution, or whether you communicate directly. Because once again, moving in the wrong direction because you don't understand context is the wrong thing, no matter how clearly you communicate. And so once again, I urge you to sharpen your senses before you sharpen your words. And so, my name is Krill. My goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. And if this video helped you, subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.